What's up? Good morning, Steve. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing this morning?
Good, good. What's up, ladies, gentlemen? My name's Jordan Rains. I'm here with my man, Steve. We are going to be going over some fantasy football knowledge with you from the IDP side. This is the IDP Hour. We are proudly part of the Full Time Fantasy Podcast Network. Our other co host, Jared Gray, unfortunately, again, cannot be with us this week. He's dealing with some family issues, but Steve and I are still here, and hopefully Jared will be back with us next week. Um, how you doing, man? How did all your matches go this last week?
I hit some good ones and some bad ones. I'm 5-0 on my sleeper league, but
There you go.
I got some other leagues where I'm just like trash.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
had my best week this last week. I think I won all but two or three of my leagues. I think I'm in 13 or 14, so it was pretty exciting. Unfortunately, one of my leagues, I told you this last week, I lost by like point 0.2 in a
Oh,
league.
that's
I
brutal.
lost in that same league this week by 3 points. So in this dynasty league, this is my
And they just
giant
break your
IDP.
heart.
Yeah, in my giant IDP dynasty league, I should be 4-1, and I'm 2-3
Oh
because
man,
of less than 4 points. So
heartbreaking.
oh well, we move on. We fight another day.
Yep.
We're gonna go over some fantasy football rankings for week 6 for you guys. Just top 24 of the three primary positions: linebackers, defensive backs, and defensive linemen. And then we're not gonna focus on that entirely today, like we usually do. We're also gonna go over some dynasty trade targets for IDP. Not many, but a couple that we think that you might be able to get that could help you build that dynasty.
Mm-hmm.
So without further ado, I suppose we will jump into the rankings.
Start with
So
linebackers.
yeah, we'll do linebackers first. So this week I'll go through our top 12. We'll kind of talk through them a little bit, and then we'll do the 12 or 13 through 24, and then we'll jump to the next positions, and then we'll get to the trade targets. So week 6 linebacker rankings. Number 1 coming in again at number 1. He's been there once or twice before. Blake Martinez. We got Luke Kuechly, Devin Bush, Jordan Hicks, Jalen Smith, Bobby Wagner, Dion Jones, Joe Schobert, Corey Littleton, Jayon Brown, Leighton Vander Esch, and Quan Alexander. Those are our top 12 linebackers going into week 6. You have a lot of the usual suspects here: Blake Martinez, Luke Kuechly. Devin Bush has just been such a great football player and a great
Mm-hmm.
IDP asset. He's just slowly been working his way up the ranks. Um, this week we put him at 3. He's kind of shown enough to be considered an elite IDP talent now. I don't think there's many people that would argue that still. There may be some, but Steve and I have been very excited about him since earlier this summer when we were famously speaking of being in flames for him.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good time.
Yes, he's done so well this year.
Yeah, and he's got a big play like in every game. He had a this crazy interception this last week where he basically caught the ball while this other guy was catching the ball, and as they both hit the ground, he just like rolled and just cradled the ball and took it up. I mean, it was a really fluid, beautiful play to watch. He's had a couple of fumble recoveries. He had a sack 2 weeks ago. So I mean, this is on top of the fact that the guy's cranking out, 8+ tackles a week basically, um, and he's in good in coverage. So he's moved his way up slowly during the season. I'm excited to say that I have him on one of my main dynasty teams, and it feels really good. I'm sure Steve, you got him in a couple spots.
I do.
Yeah, you're feeling pretty good about it. I'm
Oh
sure.
yeah. Yep.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. All right. Well, let's see if there's any more guys on this list that are kind of interesting. Like I said, a lot of the usual suspects. Jalen Smith, he's a perennial top 6, top 7 guy. Bobby Wagner, Luke Kuechly. Um, Leighton Vander Esch has kind of been slowly going down a little bit just because his snap counts are kind of weird. Sometimes he's 100% snaps, sometimes he's 80% snaps. He's still a beast. Joe Schobert, he's kind of slowly moved his way up, and I say slowly because that's really on me. I should be paying more attention. He's having a great season right now. Um, especially in the tackle department. He's close to the tackle leader right now. If he's not the tackle leader, he's got 54 tackles, which is insane. 38 of them solo. At linebacker, he is the solo tackle leader. It's 38. Blake Martinez has 37. Um, he's got a forced fumble. He's got a sack. Um, I think it's a lot of the IDP or a lot of the fantasy football attention in Cleveland was on the offensive side of the ball. And when we did talk about defensive players, it was always Myles Garrett. What's Myles Garrett going to do? How big of a season is Myles Garrett going to have? And nobody was really talking about, the inside man here, Joe Schobert, who is, like I said, the numbers don't lie. He's leading. He's like the number one. He's one of the top ranked, not the number one, but he's pretty close to the highest ranked linebacker. Shaquille Barrett, and depending on your league, still going to be ahead of him. But tackle wise, he's leading the league, or he's leading the linebackers at solo tackle. So that's an impressive feat. It helps that they're on the field a lot because Baker's not doing anything but messing up right now.
Throwing interception.
Yeah, just getting that defense right back out there. Schobert can't even take his helmet off before he's back on the field. So
he just keeps it right on.
What are you gonna do? Quan Alexander, he proved he showed last week that he still got it. He came in for that. I don't know if they gave him an actual sack credit, but he had a really, really nice play against Baker early in that game on Monday night where he came in and, he was just, the speed off the line was insane. I know he at least got a QB hit out of it. I don't know if your league allowed. I don't know if everybody's league has points for QB hits, but he's definitely recovered from his injury, and the 49ers defense is really good. So first top 12 appearance, I think. Maybe he was on there in week 1 or 2. I don't really remember all the way back, but
no, that's not fair though. That's against Baker. Their line's been kind of weak.
I know. But we got to give him a little shout out. He's playing with confidence. This list isn't necessarily like these guys are guaranteed to be a top 6 linebacker, a top 12 linebacker. It's more like these are the guys that you should be confident playing as a top 6 linebacker or a top 12 linebacker. The production, the odds are that they can pull this off. Deion Jones being on this list, speaking of which, is kind of interesting. He's had a slow start to the season. The first week his snap counts were kind of low. He hasn't really had a big tackle game until this last week when he played Houston. He finally hit double-digit tackles. If you've watched the games, he's showing, he's still showing that he's got the elite sideline-to-sideline speed. Coverage, I'm not real sure how that's looked this season. He doesn't have a lot of pass deflections, but maybe he's just not getting thrown at. But this week he should have a solid opportunity to produce. He plays the Cardinals, who run like the most plays in the league right now. So they'll be on the field a lot. Kyler, for all of his fantasy football, positive energy, he's not doing great IRL. And the drives aren't necessarily ending in touchdowns. They throw a lot of passes. They're moving the chains. So I expect a decent week out of Deion Jones. Let's go ahead and move on to 13 through 24. 13, we got Zach Cunningham. We got 14, Neville Hewitt, Jamie Collins, Jerome Baker, Rashaan Evans, Shaq Thompson, Fred Warner, Levante David, Benardrick McKinney, KJ Wright, and Hassan Reddick.
I see Jamie Collins at 15, but I have a sneaking suspicion he shoots way up that list.
Yeah, they got
a couple big plays, and he's just gonna be like. Whoo.
Yeah, they got a cush matchup tonight against the Giants. And for those who don't know this, we are
recording. He's gonna be sitting pretty.
Well, we'll see. Calm down, guy.
Well, he's been doing it every week.
Bill might mess around and just play him 10% of snaps. So.
Yeah, right. He's been destroying it out there. He'd be a fool not to play him.
Well, sounds like we found the Patriots fan in the group.
You didn't. They didn't know I was a Patriots fan. I don't know. They ain't paying attention.
But for those of you who don't know, we are recording this very early on Thursday morning. So this game is tonight. Zach Cunningham, nothing to say there. Dude's amazing. Jamie Collins, not really much to say there. Starting with confidence. Jerome Baker's kind of a weird one. And honestly, looking at this, I probably have missed a tad too high. I should probably have Shaq Thompson, Rashawn Evans over him, probably Fred Warner even. Honestly, Jerome Baker, now I'm looking at this, should probably be closer to 19-20 than 16.
Shaq Thompson been doing pretty well
Shaq
too.
Thompson's been having a great year. Jerome Baker has been playing a ton of snaps, like so many snaps. It's unreal. But his production is just not matching, which is kind of, I don't know. It makes me feel like he's due for one of these giant games that he has not had.
Yeah.
So he keeps going in the top. You know, he's reliable. Like he's not going to goose you. He's not going to get you 2 or 3. But his ceiling seems to be a little bit capped right now. I don't know if that's the play calling. I don't know if that's the amount of effort you really put into playing for a team that's quite clearly not trying to win, no matter what they say. I mean, we hear the lip service, but you watch them play, they aren't doing that. I mean, they're trading away their best asset. They're not playing their best players on offense. A la Kenyon Drake is barely on the field for 45% of snaps. I mean, he's the only offensive player they have that has really shown himself to be good at anything in any capacity. So I don't know. I don't buy it that they're trying to win. I think they're trying to do just enough to, I don't really know what they're doing, honestly, actually. I mean, they're just not a great team. The effort, low competitive nature.
Yeah, I'm surprised they haven't brought fans out onto the field. Hey guys, can play a game.
Yeah,
try it. Be a real life NFL player.
Yeah. Neville Hewitt. This is the first time he's cracked the list, and this kind of circles back around the fact that C.J. Mosley. We don't really talk about many injuries this week, but C.J. Mosley is out again. He hasn't played since week 1. His groin is messed up. This is week 6. He did not go on IR, so you have to assume that he will be back sometime in the next few weeks. But who knows? I think this injury he may end up just going on IR eventually. I mean, I don't know what, the extent of the injury, but obviously it was pretty bad. But Neville Hewitt has been playing in his stead fairly well. 19 solo tackles, 12 assists. He's got 2 sacks, if you can believe it, and an interception. So that's pretty good numbers from a guy who got called up, week 1, week 2, after as they were figuring out their linebacking core when Avery Williamson, was out in the offseason or went down in the summer with the ACL tear. They were kind of figuring out whether it was going to be Hewitt or Cashman. Blake Cashman was another guy that was kind of in the mix there, but it seems like Neville Hewitt's kind of taken that job and made the most of it. He seems to be their most talented player right now. So he got a nod. He got welcomed into the fray, into the list this week, and he got pretty high. So play him with confidence if you got him. I think he's going to have a big week. Shaq Thompson, again, if he's for some reason still sitting on your waiver wires because his name's not big enough, go get him right now. He's having an absolutely incredible season. How many tackles does he have total? I'll have to look that up in a minute, but he's doing great. He's having a great season all around. He's playing on a team that's their offense, their offense is just kind of ho-humish. It's all Christian McCaffrey.
Shaq Thompson is sitting at 32 solo and 17 assists.
32 solo. Oh gosh, no wonder I was looking down the list a little bit too far. Yeah, that's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. On top of 2 sacks and 2 passes defended. So, yeah, I know he got picked up on waivers in a couple of leagues I was in a week or 2 back.
I grabbed him up.
I wasn't paying close enough attention.
Him and Neville Hewitt, too.
Nice. Well, it sounds like Steve's the guy y'all should be listening to. Steve, you need to start giving us more advice, dude. I want to be like you.
I was like, well, I just pay attention to who's doing well. I mean,
it's just simple, right?
And there's I'm like, man, my guys aren't. None of the guys in my leagues are paying attention. I'm like, what are you guys doing? Look at these guys. I'm like 4 weeks in, and these guys are killing it. I'm like, no, these guys are still ain't picked up.
Look at it.
What are you doing?
Hassan Reddick made the list this week. He's playing 100% of snaps finally. The last couple of years, he was in some funky situations. They were pulling him on and off the field. He was playing special teams. But right now, he seems to be locked in next to Jordan Hicks. He comes in at 24, but the draft pedigree's there. He was a first-round draft pick. Now he's kind of a veteran. I think this is his third year in the league, and they're playing him. So Hassan Reddick has slowly been creeping up the stat board. He's at linebacker. He actually is right now tied at 25 with several guys, but he has 21 solo tackles. That's not bad. He's got a grand total of 37 tackles, which, through 5 weeks is good. And I think he missed the first week too. So that's actually quite impressive. And he's got a sack. And 4 passes defended. So he's out here doing work for your team. He actually, look at this. He's actually tied for third with the most passes defended at linebacker with Jamie Collins and Jayon Brown, Quan Alexander, and Lorenzo Alexander. So he's showing himself to be quite adept at coverage. So another reason he'll probably not leave the field. And if you're one of those people that's out there hating on Jordan Hicks saying, oh, he sucks because he's going to get hurt eventually, even better. Go get Hassan Reddick now while he's not hurt. So that's kind of our linebackers top 1 through 24. I'll read them off real quick again here from the beginning. We had Blake Martinez, Luke Kuechly, Devin Bush, Jordan Hicks, Jalen Smith, Bobby Wagner, Deion Jones, Joe Schobert, Corey Littleton, Jayon Brown, Leighton Vander Esch, Quan Alexander, Zach Cunningham, Neville Hewitt, Jamie Collins, Jerome Baker, Rashaan Evans, Shaq Thompson, Fred Warner, Miles Jack, Levante David, Benardrick McKinney, KJ Wright, and Hassan Reddick. So let's move on to defensive backs. We do want to make sure we get to the trade targets for Dynasty we talked about earlier. So, pardon me. All right, so week 6, defensive back rankings 1 through 12. Jamal Adams, Antoine Bethea, Von Bell, Landon Collins, Justin Reed, Terrell Edmonds, John Johnson, Ronnie Harrison, Jabril Peppers, Sean Williams, Tracy Walker, and Harrison Smith. Again, these are a lot of usual suspects. Jamal Adams is leading the way. He's an incredible talent. He was the number 1 defensive back last season. Nothing to say really there. Antoine Bethea is having another great year. He was the number 2 defensive back last season on the back of 99 solo tackles. The dude's he's a tackling machine, and that's what you want is a solid floor, and then the rest will just kind of come and go as it pleases. Von Bell, he kind of showed up last week. He's back on again. He had kind of a down week last week, but I expect him to get right this week, do a little bit more for your team, kind of like he did the previous 2 weeks. They get the Jaguars, so there will be chances for mistakes, fumble recoveries. Maybe he'll get a sack. Who knows what Sean Payton's going to have him do, but he's a solid choice, and thus he gets the nod. Other guys on this list, Jabril Peppers moved up again a little bit. They play the Patriots tonight. I expect them to be on the field a lot, and I expect that to yield some big play opportunities. I know the Patriots are kind of banged up. Josh Gordon was questionable. Edelman was questionable. Who else was questionable? I think Rex Burkhead's questionable. So anyway, they're going to be trotting out an interesting group of guys for these defensive backs to get a piece of. Should be plenty of over-the-middle stops as Tom Brady throws his dump-offs to James White out of the backfield, as he throws his crossing routes to whoever is out there if it's not Julian Edelman. Maybe it's Jacoby Myers. Who knows? But Tracy Walker back up here too. People may have forgot about him because last week he was on bye. Dude's having a crazy season for the Lions. He's 10 solo tackle games. And if you've played IDP for any period of time, you know that is a feat in and of itself to do once, especially at defensive back. To do it twice, I mean, now you're talking my language. Now you have my attention. So, not that he hasn't. He's been in the top 10, top 15 pretty much the past 4 or 5 weeks. But those are the top 6 or 12. I keep saying 6 because I keep looking at the week 6. So, again, it's kind of the usual suspects there. We'll go into your 13 through 24. We have some new names here. We have Demarius Randall at 13, Monte Nicholson, Minka Fitzpatrick, Jared Wilson, Eric Reed. I said something on Twitter last week. The last 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I've put Eric Reed as Ed Reed on these rankings. And nobody's really noticed, probably because he's just been having an okay season and nobody's overly excited about him. But I noticed it and I was like, man, I can't believe I did that. So I fixed it this week. It's Eric Reed. Then you got your first cornerback that we've put in here maybe all season, Logan Ryan. We got Buda Baker way down at 19. I'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. Eric Weddle, Desmond King, Kyle Fuller, Kendall Fuller, and Kareem Jackson. I guess I'll talk about Buda Baker first and foremost. Buda Baker, last 2 weeks, especially last week, has been playing less safety, free safety, strong safety, any safety. He's just been playing less. They've been having him play more nickel corner. So he's playing more off man than he is playing off the ball, which means he's getting less tackle opportunities, and that has shown up in the stat sheet the past 2 weeks. So he's taken a little dip in IDP production. I still think he's an elite talent. I still think you can start him. And if you have more than 2 or 3 defensive back spots and you don't have a lot of great options, you should start him. But temper your expectations for him for now until we see this Arizona offense, really decide to play him in a particular spot, hopefully safety for the rest of the season. Logan Ryan's having a really, really good year. He's had some really good plays for the Titans, some really big plays for the Titans. I think he's got at least one touchdown. He might have 2. He got 2 interceptions on the year, 18 solo tackles, 12 assists, which is really good for a defensive back or a cornerback. He's got 2.5 sacks, if you can believe it. That's 1.5 more sacks than Aaron Donald has. Let that kind of sink in for just a minute. He's got 30 tackles in total. I think I just said that. He's having a great season, and I've had him on 1 or 2 teams that I have to start a cornerback. And every week I look at his score, I'm just like more impressed. I'm like, man, dude, you're out here killing it. Got a couple other cornerbacks this week: Desmond King, Kyle Fuller, Kendall Fuller. If you've watched my rankings the past few weeks, I don't usually include defensive backs or cornerbacks because they're just a little bit hard to project what they're going to do. But these guys have just been so consistently producing. They don't get a lot of assisted tackles, but they're getting a high number of solo tackles. 25 for Kyle Fuller. Kendall Fuller's got 22. They're getting you some pass defended points. Kyle Fuller's got 5 passes defended and 2 interceptions, which is pretty good. Considering we're only heading into week 6, so he's averaging basically an interception a week. Kendall Fuller, not quite as insane of the amount of production, but he does have a sack to go with his 30 tackles, which is good, and he's got 2 passes defended, so that's not bad. They're on teams that Kendall Fuller's on the Chiefs. He's kind of getting picked on a little bit out there, and he's consistently showing up in your stat sheet. Kyle Fuller's on the Bears, and the Bears offense just overall is just really, really good. So everybody on that team is pretty much producing in some capacity, except for Akeem Hicks, who's having a really slow start to the season. Who else was on that list? Desmond King. This one's a little bit he's having an okay-ish year, not the best he's had. But if you're in a league that gets punt return yards, he's out there getting some punt returns for you. Didn't he have a couple of sacks? Let me look at this real quick. Okay, here we go. He's not having a great tackle season, but he has 2.5 sacks. He's got a forced fumble recovery. He's got 5 quarterback hits, which means they're, again, which goes with his 2.5 sacks. He ties Logan Ryan with 2.5 sacks. I'm not overly sure why his tackle numbers are kind of low this year, but I would expect that to go up just as as their defense has kind of struggled to keep guys healthy. Their linebacking core is kind of falling apart. He might have to step in and play some safety along with playing his corner role. So I threw them on the list this week. I think you can start them with a little bit more confidence than some of these other safeties that are just kind of showing up. Kareem Jackson, I wrote a little thing last week for the Dynasty Nerds about him being on my do not play, do not like, sit list. And of course, because he just hasn't produced. And of course, last week he went out and had a crazy good game. He's been pretty consistently on my top 24 rankings. I think he's only missed it once or twice, but put him in at 24 again. I'm still not overly confident playing him, but he's shown himself to be reliable through the test of time. So you can play him if you need to in a pinch. Any of these guys kind of stand out to you on the last 13 through 24?
I just thought it was kind of interesting that you'd put so many cornerbacks in there.
Yeah, and like I said, I kind of brought that up because I was just looking at the numbers and I couldn't justify putting some of these safeties in there over some of these guys when their production has just been so, it hasn't been inconsistent. It's been fairly consistent. So
yeah,
I wanted to give them a nod. So I'll read these back again real quick. 1 through 24 for defensive backs in week 6. Jamal Adams, Antoine Bethea, Von Bell, Landon Collins, Justin Reed, Terrell Edmonds, John Johnson, Ronnie Harrison, Jabril Peppers, Sean Williams, Tracy Walker, Harrison Smith, Demarius Randall, Monte Nicholson, Minka Fitzpatrick, Jared Wilson, Eric Reed, Logan Ryan, Buda Baker, Eric Weddle, Desmond King, Kyle Fuller, Kendall Fuller, and Kareem Jackson. All right, we'll move into the defensive lineman rankings for week 6 real quick here, and then we'll go over these trade targets with you guys. 1 through 12, we got Daniil Hunter leading the way at 1, Joey Bosa, J.J. Watt, Myles Garrett, Grady Jarrett, Sam Hubbard, T.J. Watt, Cameron Jordan, Nick Bosa. He shot up my rankings after that Monday night game. Von Miller, he also went up the rankings this week. I'll touch on that soon. DeForest Buckner and Jadeveon Clowney. Any of those guys stick out to you?
Let's see. I don't know.
Well, one that's kind of obvious. Clowney, yep. Clowney making the list is. We'll get to him, but I'll kind of want to go. I'm going to start first with Nick Bosa. I don't know if you guys watched.
Yeah.
The Monday night game, but apparently
impressive. Bosa is what he was.
Yeah, he did not look. He didn't look unhealthy at all. He looked like the hybrid of Aaron Donald and J.J. Watt. Like if they melded into one human being, it would be Nick Bosa. The dude was low,
compliment there,
quick. I mean, he was in Baker's face constantly. And granted, their offensive line's not great, but I mean, that was just an absolute ass whooping that he put on them. I think he looked healthy to me. I don't think there's any reason not to expect elite numbers from him going forward. They seem like they got their mojo going there pretty well. So he flew up my rankings. He's been in the top 24 before, but closer to like 18, 19, 20. And he hasn't really produced, but I knew the talent was there. So it was nice to see him get that done. Jadeveon Clowney, the thing with him is it's the big play. He seems to just kind of always end up with a big play a game, which kind of bails him out. Like his tackle numbers are pretty abysmal this season. I mean, we're talking 9 complete tackles. That's not good at all. But
he ends up with like an interception for a touchdown.
Exactly. He has a sack. He's got 3 QB hits. He's got 3 passes defended. He's got an interception, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, and a touchdown. All of these things have kind of inflated his overall, IDP per stat line, and he's a top 24 guy, even though he's only got 9 tackles, which is kind of crazy. This week they play. Let me double check real quick. Seahawks, guess who they play?
Who?
The Browns.
The Browns. Okay,
Yeah.
never mind.
So there should be ample opportunity for him to,
Okay, that's different. I'll give you that one.
bring up
There's certain teams where if they play them, I mean, I'm just like, blow up the stat line.
Yeah.
It's the Browns. If you play the
Yep.
Browns, if you play the Dolphins.
Yep.
What's another team? If you play,
you can
Yeah.
inflate your projections a little bit in
Yep.
your favor. So I think he's got a great matchup this week.
There's
I don't
another
think
team
it's
out there.
obvious.
The Cardinals. If you play the Cardinals,
Yeah, Cardinals, Houston, they have pretty
Yep.
bad lines. So I expect a big game from him. Hopefully he gets his tackle numbers up a little bit. Let's maybe get him closer to 15, 16 overall by this time next week.
yeah.
And hopefully I think he's going to pull off a sack, maybe a forced fumble again, fumble recovery. I mean, who knows? But the big playability is there. So I expect a good week out of him. Von Miller is
I was
making
gonna say, what about Von Miller?
he's making his first little trip into the top 10 here. He's had a pretty sluggish start to the season.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have bumped him up that high.
Well, he's another one of those guys.
Who they playing?
Let's talk about who they're playing. They play the Titans this week. Titans have given up the second most sacks in the league, I believe. First or second most sacks in the league, the Titans have.
Yeah,
I will double check that real quick.
If that's the case, then you might as well give him a little bump then.
Yeah, and he finally got a hold of a quarterback, not this last week, but 2 weeks ago. He had 2 sacks. They've had a decent matchup last week, so he was kind of held in check, but he should feast against Mariota. Their offensive line is allowing a sack on like 14% of dropbacks or something like that, which is insane. It's the second highest rate in the league.
I feel like that whole situation there in Tennessee is it's a chicken or egg situation. Is it Mariota? Is it the line? Is it the coach? What's going wrong there?
I don't know. Mariota's quarterback rating seems to be going pretty well. But he's the most sacked quarterback. I'm just double checking here. He has 21. He's been sacked 22 times. Kyler Murray's been sacked 21, and Andy Dalton's been sacked 20 times. So, Von Miller, this is a perfect breakout game for him this season. People have been playing him. People have been unhappy.
He needs to do it here.
I've had him. I had him. I picked him up off waivers in a league. Like, that's where we're at with Von Miller right now. In a redraft league, nobody wants him. He's not producing. The Broncos just look abysmal, aside from Cortland Sutton apparently. But he's in a perfect spot to have a big game. You have to respect his resume. As a Super Bowl MVP, he's been I don't know if he's been the sack leader before or not, but I know he's won Defensive Player of the Year. The guy's. And he's still fairly young. He's not even 30, I don't think. If he is, he's just barely at 30. So he's got a couple more good years under his belt. I don't think he's going to chalk this season up to a wash. I think he's going to go out there. I think he's going to make Marcus Mariota his biatch.
And then do you think they're going to have problems with Chubb not being there?
No, because, he's played most of his career without Chubb, I know he had DeMarcus Ware for a little bit, but even when DeMarcus Ware was gone, Von Miller was still an elite pass rusher. So I expect his elite pass rushing ability coupled with the Titans' terrible offensive line to result in a very big day for Von Miller this week.
Laying out the red carpet, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Just give this man all the points, all the tackles, all the sacks. Just give it to him. He's earned it.
I like it.
All right, we'll go through 13 through 24. We got Cameron Hayward, Chandler Jones, Calais Campbell, Shaq Barrett, Josh Allen, Brian Burns, Frank Clark, Whitney Merciless, Larry Ogunjobi, Stefan Tuitt, Yannick Ngakoue, and Aaron Donald. I guess we'll start with the fact that we have several Steelers on this list. Cameron Hayward and Stefan Tuitt. They've both been kind of playing lights out this season. They're both in the top 25. I'll take that back. They're both in the top 10 at defensive lineman and fantasy value right now. Cameron Hayward has 20 28, 26, 27, 28, 29, something like that. He's like 20. Well, let me do this real fast. 25. He's got 25 tackles, combined tackles. He's got 3.5 sacks. He got a forced fumble, 5 QB hits. He's playing lights out. He's playing defensive tackle right now. And Stephon Tuitt is playing the outside defensive lineman there. And he's got 22. I'm sorry. He got 22 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 6 QB hits. 6.5 tackles for loss on top of that. So they're both playing very, very well. On top of that, they have Bud Dupree and TJ Watt. There's just pressure coming at you from this Steelers defensive line that hasn't been there in the past. And they're just completely wrecking people. I mean, especially when they get an offensive line that's kind of shady. They're taking full advantage of that. This week they play the Chargers, who – let me double check here. Let's see how many times old Phillip Rivers has been sacked this year. Phillip Rivers has been sacked 11 times. So not an awful lot, but I see him getting sacked a couple of times this week easily, especially with all that talent you get on the line. So those guys are definitely I'm giving them a shout. You can play them with a level of confidence that maybe in the past you haven't. Cameron Hayward had a down year last year, but the year before he was a really good IDP asset. It's good to see Tuitt kind of moving up there. Larry Ogunjobi, he's on that defensive line with Myles Garrett. He's been silently producing very, very well for IDP folks that have him. He's not a complete and total world beater per se. But let's put it this way. He's having a lot better season than Mr. 24, Aaron Donald, who, in all honesty, in my opinion, is almost borderline droppable, especially in redraft. You got to make room to for guys that are actually going to produce. Ogunjobi got 18 tackles this season, 3 sacks. Aaron Donald has, I think, 13 tackles on the season and a sack.
If he starts picking them up, you can always grab him again. But
exactly. Or if you can move him right now, try to do that. But you're not really going to get anything for him. And it's crazy to think that, in IDP leagues, he was probably a top 10 guy taken. If you're a tackle heavy, I'm sure people went hard on the linebackers first. But he was one of the top 2 defensive linemen taken, almost guaranteed, and definitely the top defensive tackle taken. So it's just kind of crazy that his season has not picked up.
Always next year.
Yeah, always next year. But it's we're coming into week 6. A third of the season. If you start your playoffs in week 14, with a little bit of imagination, half the season's already over, basically. And this dude is defensive lineman like 50.
Oh, man, you're breaking my heart already.
He's destroying your team out there. I don't really know what else to say about him. Brian Burns is having a good year. Josh Allen, they're both the rookies at 17 and 18. I guess I'll kind of use this as a segue. Then I'll read these back off to you guys real quick, and then we'll talk some dynasty trade targets. But
before we got to that, there was just one guy I wanted to talk about that I haven't seen pop into your rankings.
Yeah.
Harold Landry.
Harold Landry, I'm glad you brought him up. He almost was on there this week, but he did not make it. I don't know exactly where he landed. He landed in the 20s. He has been having a good year. I'm glad you brought him up. I picked him up on waivers in a league last week and played him. He had 9 tackles last week, something like that.
I think it was 7, but he had 7 and a sack. He's had 4 sacks this year already.
Yeah, and
last year he had 4.5 sacks all year.
Yeah, he's having a great season.
He is.
He's an outside linebacker technically, but I know that
he plays against Flacco this week.
Ooh, that's a good matchup.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's worthy. He's a worthy candidate. He probably deserved to make the top 24 this week. As I'm looking at this list,
I think he's a good play this week.
You could probably play him over Aaron Donald pretty easily at 24. I would. I mean, if I'm not no shade, I mean, I would play him
Yeah,
over
I
Aaron
just
Donald.
I wanted to mention him while we were talking about that list because I
All good
definitely
call.
would play him over Aaron Donald.
And he's pretty young too, so he's probably a guy you can go look for in Dynasty.
23.
Oh yeah, he's a guy you should be looking for in Dynasty. Which we'll go ahead and talk about Dynasty right now. I'll read these lists back off to you real quick. 1 through 24 defensive linemen, week 6. We got Daniil Hunter, Joey Bosa, J.J. Watt, Myles Garrett, Grady Jarrett, Sam Hubbard, T.J. Watt, Cameron Jordan, Nick Bosa, Von Miller, DeForest Buckner, Jadeveon Clowney, Cameron Hayward, Chandler Jones, Calais Campbell, Shaq Barrett, Josh Allen, Brian Burns, Frank Clark, Whitney Merciless, Larry Ogunjobi, Stephon Tuitt, Yannick Ngakoue, and Aaron Donald. So those guys are guys that you can, you should probably play. Aaron Donald, a little iffy there. We just said,
And Harold Landry.
if you can get a guy like Harold Landry on your team, play him over Aaron Donald. If you can trade Aaron Donald, now's probably the time.
Trade him.
But let's do some dynasty trade targets right now for IDP. A couple of guys I have written down at linebacker: Leighton Vander Esch and Deion Jones, both having okay starts to the season, but are not the world beaters that we kind of hoped. I know they both were taken almost always in the top 10 of all the drafts I did this offseason. Redraft and dynasty as far as linebackers are concerned. Deion Jones slipped a little, but there was always that guy who felt like he was getting a super deal getting him as the 5th or 6th linebacker. But these guys are having a pretty sluggish start to the season. The snap percentages that Leighton Vander Esch is playing are kind of nebulous week to week. The tackles are there, but the big plays and the people kind of pandering to them is not. So this might be a time to go strike, especially on Leighton Vander Esch. I've thought about making a play for him in Dynasty. I would recommend other people do that. All it's going to take is one 14-15 tackle game in the next week or two, and he's going to be completely unavailable probably.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the same with Deion Jones, who's got a great matchup this week against the Cardinals, kind of like we said earlier.
Get him now.
Yeah, you might want to go get him this weekend because he had 2 interceptions last year in the 5 games that he played. So I could see him picking off Kyler Murray pretty easily this week. And if he houses that and he puts up 11 tackles, their buy low window in Dynasty is over. So if you can put together a package deal for these guys, I would recommend it. Anybody that you've kind of been eyeing in your Dynasty leagues as like buy low or for a linebacker?
For linebackers, who have I been looking at?
I mean, Jerome Baker, he's young and we talked about him a little bit earlier. He's not super performing, so he might be a good snag.
Let me look real quick.
All good. I'm going to go ahead and break down these other 2 guys that I got here at defensive back. I think this would be a good time to go look for Jesse Bates. You brought that up actually right before we popped on here. Jesse Bates and Derwin James, both were rookies last year. Derwin James is hurt. You might be able to get him cheap right now. He's putting up zeros for somebody's team. If they're a 2-3 team and they're trying to, set themselves up in the next couple of weeks to make the playoffs, they're probably more inclined to move a guy like Derwin James now, especially if they can get a meaningful asset that they can play on their team for him. And if you're talking, if it's a pretty good scoring for IDPs, you might be able to trade somebody middle of the pack, lower end RB2 kind of guys like maybe a Miles Sanders for a Derwin James right now, in Dynasty. And you could have Derwin James's, all pro ability on your team just by getting rid of a Miles Sanders who somebody needs the points for. So somebody like that, maybe in that area. I mean, that's depending on your league and depending on who owns Derwin James, they might not want to come off him like that. But, this is the time to go sniffing around.
Tremaine Edmonds might be one you could get pretty cheap right now.
Yeah, that's a great example of a linebacker you could probably get cheap. Tremaine Edmonds, he's been lackluster is a good word.
Mm-hmm.
The word that comes to mind when you think of him, especially when you look at his scores. He's been outperformed several times this year by Matt Milano, who I saw got traded right before the season started for like a 2021 fifth-round pick in a big dynasty league I'm in. So, you can get these guys, especially if somebody's got several linebackers. He's a great target. Good one there, Steve. And a couple of defensive linemen that I'm looking to make a play for in Dynasty right now are Bradley Chubb. Just went out with the ACL. I know that he's not going to be useful this year, but if you're sitting pretty or if you're looking to build like an actual dynasty, like a team that's going to have elite players for a while, this might be the only time you can get Bradley Chubb as far as a buy low candidate. He played a couple of games. He had his kind of breakout game where he put up the points and then he got hurt. So the owner is frustrated. He's sitting on their IR spot, or if they don't have an IR spot, which I mean, it's a dynasty, they should. They're not doing anything for him. So if they can get a piece that's going to help them win now, they're definitely more likely to do that than they would have 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. And Josh Allen, this is a guy that he's a rookie this year. I know a lot of people, in dynasty leagues that I did this year, we did our rookie drafts. He was going in that third, fourth round area. He was one of the top defensive linemen taken, but his production's been solid so far. But the thing about him is I think there's a lot of ceiling left. So you might have to pay a little bit more than you want to for him right now. But he's playing the second most defensive lineman snaps on the team behind Calais Campbell, just by a hair. I mean, he's only 10, 15 snaps behind Campbell. But in fantasy points, he's actually outproducing Campbell. He's let me double check exactly what he's got here. I'll pull them up side by side right now. Calais Campbell. Side by side, Calais Campbell has 23 tackles total. Josh Allen has 17. They each have 3 sacks. Calais Campbell has 8 QB hits. Josh Allen has 7 QB hits. And if you watch Josh Allen in college, one of the things that a lot of people harped on and said his superpower is forcing fumbles. I mean, he's always got his hands out. Even when he's not close to quarterbacks, he's reaching. He's got long arms. He's got 2 forced fumbles this year in 5 games as a rookie. He's kind of probably the best rookie defensive lineman that is playing right now. I know LJ Collier has been a huge, I don't want to say huge bust, but he's not been great. Brian Burns is also having a pretty decent season, 14 tackles. But Brian Burns, Josh Allen, and Bradley Chubb, all really young outside linebackers / defensive ends. I know on Sleeper app they're defensive ends, and on ESPN they're defensive ends or edge rushers, whatever you want to call them. So you can play those guys there. They're getting the tackles, they're getting the snaps, and they're making the plays that we were promised they would make. So you might want to go, like I said, buy low or trade for that. The time to get them is now before they really start turning it on. Kind of like Sam Hubbard. Last year, Sam Hubbard was putting up okay-ish numbers, but he wasn't getting a crazy amount of snaps, and he got the snaps, and now he's a top 5 defensive lineman. Crazy tackle numbers from him. He's kind of getting the quarterback finally after that little dip the first there from weeks 2 to 4. But those are my kind of dynasty trade targets right now as we enter week 6. Those are the IDP rankings that I have for week 6 as well. I don't really have anything else today to go over. Just, again, shout out Full Time Fantasy Podcast Network. Those are the guys that host us. They treat us really well over there. We got a good group of guys, a good group of podcasts on the network. Worth checking out if you want to expand your repertoire.
Yep.
So, and Jared should be back with us next week again, hopefully. Any other comments, Steve, before we close her out?
Nope. I just, like I said, Harold Landry. Keep rolling with Shaq Barrett.
Yeah, he did not have a sack this week.
No, I think he'll
But,
have
I
another
mean-
one next week. Yep.
He is human after all, I guess.
Well, I mean, we all have down weeks. He probably
Yeah.
had the flu or something.
He's still averaging over a sack a week, so
Oh, for real. I mean, he's
almost 2 sacks a week.
Yep.
Insanity. All right, well, guys, give us all follows on Twitter. I'm at 50 Shades of Drunk. Jared is at Jared Gray. Steve is at the Dynasty Chef. We tweet about IDP and fantasy football. We're on people's threads talking and conversating. We're answering questions. There's always a good discussion somewhere on Twitter. If you're not on there, join. If you do join, don't be a troll. Hang out, learn something, share some knowledge with us, and we like to have a good time over there. So I guess we'll close out the show. This has been the IDP Hour. Week 6 starts tonight, so I don't know what to say. I don't want to say go Patriots. I don't want to say go Giants. So
Go Pats.
I'm just going to say go football.
Go Pats.
All right. Well, we'll see y'all next week. Same time, same place.
Don't worry. I'm sure Kansas City will have a better week.
Hey, don't even start with me right now. All right. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.